All right, Jack Wix and his business partner Paul Crawshaw came up with that spin-on oil filter design. And I was thinking about that last night. Why did it take Dodge until the 60s to adapt that? I'm sure the guys racing were using that. But anyway, looks like a German conglomerate has bought out Wix Oil Filters. For global distribution now. But speaking of innovation, somebody came up with this idea to prime the Chevy small block. And there's the drive. You can chuck up a drill right here. And this also works on a Pontiac engine. So this setup, I can't remember what engine type. Maybe a Chrysler 318. But this had to go down into the hole, turn the oil pump to prime it, and imagine taking this out, and then you drop this down there. So I had this all sealed up with RTV red. So on the 4.0, I just got an old Distributor and popped the drive gear off it. Stick that in there. And then you can actually put your drill motor right on there and chuck it up right there and spin it. So look at our Distributor. That barely even spins. So when this engine overheated, it must have scorched the bearings in this. So this is just some bushings in here. That's how it's supposed to spin. And this one's not spinning at all. You can see the drive gear damaged. And look at that damage where the oil pump has to drive this. So the cam probably has some wear. Most likely that oil pump's got some wear. But we have to draw the line right here. We're going to put in a new Distributor. We'll just have to live with the wear on those other components. So if you were to make a tool, you would take a punch and drive that pin out of there, and then this gear comes off. I was thinking about cleaning this up and putting it back in, but now that I think about it, something in there is really scorched up. It's time to change that. So I had an oil leak I couldn't find. It was on a Pontiac 350. And this is the oil filter mount on a Pontiac. There's our Pontiac blue. Here's our feature that Jack Wix and Paul Crawshaw came up with. But the leak appeared to be in this area. It wasn't coming from the threads. Turns out it was coming from the metal to plastic feature on the pressure switch. When the engine was off, you'd get in there and you just couldn't see it. It would get on the headers and just smoke and burn off. So this distributor is essentially junk. I don't think this will even make a good priming tool. But anyway, we'll pop this gear collar off and take a look at it. That little pin just will drive out. Gonna need some mechanical advantage on this. Okay, there's no pressurized oil in this shaft, and that's because you don't want this to wick up the shaft and get on your ignition module. So the lubrication's just that brass bearing, and there's perhaps some oil mist from the crankcase, or maybe some splashing oil from the camshaft drive gear. So the camshaft is getting some oil, lubricating this meshing feature. Definitely all scored up. Look at that, man. Unbelievable. Look at up here. This really overheated bad. Okay, let's compare this shaft to the shaft on my homemade tool here. Right there's, we'll call that normal wear. That bushing's brass. Same concept as the pilot bushing on your transmission. Wow, look at that. And it's all scorched up there too. Really wonder how you would find this unless you visually inspected it. This engine certainly has had its share of overheats. after we've had this apart 2 or 3 times, that has freed itself up. So the concern that this was somehow affecting engine performance, not sure we're correct with that. It's certainly worn out though to the place where it needs to be replaced. What happened probably was some rust built up in here while it was sitting, and that's why it wouldn't turn before. I bought a TUPY off a guy that left the head out in his backyard. I looked at it, I said, the in-cast valve guides are rusted to the valve. He goes, it's still good. I said, it's probably still good, but I don't want to do all this work. He's like, my wife wants it out of here. Please take it. All right, here's our replacement. Let's see what we got. Made in China. A premium distributor. On Amazon, this was the first selection. Let's see what we got. Well, they certainly packed this good. And there she is. Looks like perhaps this is holding this from rotation. I don't know what this is actually. Yep, there it is. She's beautiful. Man, oh man. Okay, I went to bed last night really worrying about this. But after this distributor shaft from the off unit's been in and out of here a couple of times, it does rotate freely. So just sitting here like it has, this kind of probably didn't have good lubrication in here in these bearings. Here's our drive gear. I mean, that most likely is just normal wear on there. There's the oil pump drive. And there's the cam gear that drives the distributor. So with this drive gear removed, this will engage with our oil pump, and we can turn that oil pump, create pressure. We're not getting anywhere near the cam. Okay, I'm turning that by hand. I can definitely feel pressure being created by that oil pump. Boy, it's a beautiful day here in the Pacific Northwest. Our oil pressure gauge is connected for our oil priming. I have my old distributor in here that I use as a tool to spin the oil pump. The gear is removed from my tool. Okay, the new distributor, it looks like the rotor cap screws or bolts have gone and changed sizes, 8 or 5/16. The old one was a 7. So this shipping pin, I thought this might be a good useful tool, but it's not long enough to be used to line up the #1 position on the distributor. But it's a keeper nonetheless. I'm pretty sure I can do something with this. So this hole right here is our #1 position where we line up the distributor shaft when we install it. This pin could be used for that. You certainly couldn't get it from the bottom because it has to be removed. I'm just going to go with my tried and true. But that's just the little shipping pin that they give you. So the gear, there's only so many positions you can install that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So there's 6 cylinders. You could get it off a tooth, I suppose. Let's show you how to install this real quick. Boy, look at that coil lead. That is really in bad shape. I'm gonna have to replace that, and I wasn't expecting to replace that. Anyway, down here in the distributor opening, that is the oil pump drive. And when we install the distributor, that needs to be at the 11 o'clock position. So just stick your screwdriver down in there and turn that to 11 o'clock. Okay, I have my engine at #1 cylinder, top dead center. I know that I set it with the head off, but you could look in this spark plug hole and see that we're coming up on #1. And also there's a mark right there on the harmonic balancer that tells you we're at top dead center. See that 0? And there's the little mark. Okay, we used a screwdriver. We reached in the distributor opening and we turned the oil pump drive to the 11 o'clock position. So 12, 6, 3, 9, 11's approximately right here. This is our trigger for the camshaft position, and that's the hole for number 1. Comes through. When you drop the distributor in, the housing's going to rotate, and you want this to be at the 5 o'clock position. So 5 o'clock's approximately right there. The teeth engage from the gear, and then that rotates. Now see that? We're not lined up right. And because we're not lined up right, we're 1 tooth off. So let's try it again. 5 o'clock position must be right here. All right, my oil pump drive must be off now. Set everything back up again. Okay, being 1 tooth off, I mispositioned the oil pump drive. So I need to reach in there with the screwdriver and turn that from 12 o'clock back to 11. Okay, let's try this again. We're back at 11 o'clock. This needs to be 5 o'clock. Obviously, I had my 5 o'clock off a little. There it is. This is a Chrysler. You line it up and it's timed. We can check it by putting the rotor on. Okay, that's number 1. Leading number 1 a little bit. The rotation is clockwise. All right, let's get this back out and prime this oil system.